And my first guest this evening is the former Deputy Supreme Allied Commander Europe, General Sir Richard Shirreff. General, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Can I ask, I mean, in a sense, we're all hoping at the moment that, you know, Trump stays involved, the peace deal happens and so forth, and yet there is that huge question mark over what happens if we're wrong. I'd be very interested in your view on the thesis that this coalition of the willing may be partly designed to fill the gap.
I think let's just pick apart some of the speculation in your scenario, which would, by the way, make the subject of a pretty rattling yarn. Number one, there is not going to be a peace deal until Russia has been forced into it. I think we have to assume Putin is never going to give up on his intent to eradicate Ukraine from the map. He will continue to prevaricate. And he will continue to play Mr. Trump along.
Right. So far we agree.
Number two, if Russia has said already, even if there is a Trump brokered deal, which gives Putin what he wants, Russia's made it very clear that they will not accept any NATO troops in Ukraine. So what? So the only way NATO troops are going to be in Ukraine to enforce a peace. So let's get rid of this word peacekeeping, because this is not going to be about a peacekeeping operation, traditional blueberries and flags. The only way there will be a NATO force in Ukraine to enforce a peace is if Russia is forced into it. And that will only happen when and if Russia is defeated on the battlefield. And we are a very long way away from that at the moment. All that said, it is absolutely right for the Prime Minister to bring together this coalition of the willing to do the planning, because that's what militaries do against potential contingencies. And what you do not want to happen is, if there is a satisfactory peace deal, as I said, I think that's a long way, a hell of a long way away. If it did happen, you would need to have ready baked, ready planned, ready to go a peace enforcement force. That is what happened in Bosnia in 96. It is what happened in Kosovo in 99, and it would need to happen again here.
Well, it seems to me that a lot of our scenarios are quite similar. The big question that still seems to me to hang over this is, what do we in Western Europe do if the Americans walk away and if Ukraine finds herself under even worse pressure than she is now?
Well, arguably the Americans have walked away. We've heard all the saga from the Munich Security Conference. We've heard Hegseth say that America will not be the security guarantor for Europe. And we are now in a new world where we cannot trust, we cannot rely on the Americans. Therefore, it is up to Europe and Canada and Europe and Canada's other partners, potentially Australia, South Korea, Japan, to go it alone. And therefore, that places, I come back to, absolutely right for Keir Starmer to be assembling people in Northwood today to talk about this sort of thing. Let me just make one other point. There can be no peace enforcement force that is not prepared to fight. Any force for the future has got to be capable of responding to the worst case, which inevitably will happen, which is a Russian incursion, another Russian attempt to take over Ukraine. And it's got to be prepared to fight. It's got to have all the tools, capabilities, and paraphernalia for modern 21st century warfare. And it's got to have the backing. And furthermore, we would have to assume that if it does deploy, it will fight. And that would therefore potentially introduce a state of war between the nations providing the force and Russia. So that means we all need to be ready for the worst case.
We are not, therefore, so far away from some kind of shooting war, even as we talk about peace, even if, as you say, we hope that a peace deal can be struck. Because it doesn't seem to me that Putin has any intention of striking a real peace deal at this stage.
I'd push back against that. We are not on a slippery slope to a shooting war. Absolutely not. Because the one proviso is, the stronger we are, the more capable we are, the more we can overmatch and outmatch the Russians and demonstrate strength, the more likely peace is likely to be maintained. But I come back to the point, there won't be a peace deal until it's forced on Russia. And that means step number one is a strategy by Europe, by Canada, by other partners, to give Ukraine the capabilities and the means to defeat Russia. Now, that is one heck of an ask, but we've got to start somewhere. And it starts by giving Ukraine the means to survive, to hold on, and at the same time, it starts by then looking in detail at the military capabilities, the weapons, the arms, the money to give Ukraine the means to support, to defeat Russia, and the reforms needed internally.
So, Richard, I suspect we're much closer than you suggest we are, but there we are. Very, very interesting, a really realistic appraisal of what's happening. Thank you very much for talking to me tonight.